It is not surprising that US publishers came up with 2 other educational comic books on Anne Frank in 2006. Although both publishers suggested their book was a graphic novel, trying to profit from the recent popularity of this phenomenon, the books could each be described as badly drawn, factual looks at the story of Anne Frank. Despite the promise of bright, action-packed scenes, especially the second of these books was strongly overshadowed by formal fact boxes, timelines, glossaries, and indexes, equally useful as unattractive. In the comic representations from the last 10 years, Anne Frank does not need an introduction anymore. She is now easily recognized as an icon in popular culture, whose meaning has grown beyond her own existence. The French author Frédéric Boyer, working in Japan, was the first to approach her in this way in his contribution, Smile Ceremony, to the prestigious collection Comics 2000, Comics 2000. Boyer's comic focuses on the smile of a number of people, whose faces are shown in some well-known photographs and illustrations presented by a Japanese woman. The pictures include portraits of an anonymous French soldier of the First World War, the pilot of the Enola Gay that dropped the atomic bomb, Paul Tibbets, and Anne Frank. This comic episode ends with some panels inspired by works of Katochika Hokusai from the early 1840s. Here, the Japanese presenter, the woman, transforms into a lion dancer with a sword, holding up a fan with a smile, hiding the woman's face as well as her emotions. The story suggests that the smile, despite its public attractiveness that is generally interpreted in a positive way, can very well hide the tragic historical circumstances of these people's lives. This underlines how much Anne Frank has become a global iconic character, easily recognized, but also reduced to a rather simplistic message of hope despite the circumstances. Anne Frank's appearance as a kind of passerby in this story was similar to her limited role in the comic book from 2009, The Groom Weer de Gris, a special one-shot story of the classic Belgian comic characters Spirou and Fantasio, by the French authors Jan and Schwartz. Their story, loaded with tongue-in-cheek references to the rich history of Belgian comics, took place in Brussels in World War II, where Spirou and Fantasio joined the resistance movement against the Nazis. Once the Germans find out Spirou is betraying them, he escapes and encounters a young Jewish girl in hiding. Never ever having kissed the boy, she asks him a favor. After their kiss, they part. And after the liberation, Spirou finds out she was deported and killed. Although the Jewish girl is named Audrey in the comic, referring to the actress Audrey Hepburn, who was supposed to play Anne's character in the 1959 US movie, she's easily recognizable as Anne Frank. The artistic freedom of the creators to rename her, as well as to move her from Holland to Belgium, expresses how much she has become an icon in pop culture. Her meaning reduced to a few elements, she can now easily be placed in a different context. Nevertheless, this mixed presentation of an indirect reference to a real-life Holocaust victim in a fictional story caused a certain unease among certain critical observers, which is, I think, somewhat comparable to the response, or actually the lack of response and enthusiasm to Astro Boy's appearance with Anne Frank in the US. The most far-reaching example of placing Anne in a different context is the American webcomic Anne Frank Conquers the Moon Nazis. In this what-if history, if I can use the word history here, Anne Frank remains are transported to a US laboratory where a mad German scientist tries to bring her back to life, as an invincible robot with which Hitler can conquer the world. Needless to say, this unfinished narrative can best be classified as an underground comic. Exploring the comic book representations of Anne Frank shows how creators and publishers have ventured beyond the battlefields in their portrayal of World War II events. Atrocities like the Holocaust have been dealt with both before Spiegelman's and Nakazawa's works, and after. Spielman's and Nakazawa's works. This case study also makes us aware of the diversity in aims, such as entertainment, educational purposes, or a mixture of both. More recently, a more distant and liberal approach can be noted, characterized by literary elements, intertextuality, and cross-media references. The reception of the diverse graphic narratives indicates a variety in expectations vis-à-vis comics, concerning what's possible and concerning what's suitable. That's an important cultural phenomenon which is developing over time, and it also shows national and regional differences. The continuously changing expectations concerning what both mainstream and subcultural comic books can present and should present deserves our further attention. Perhaps topical cross-sections, such as representation of global events like World War II, may help us to understand the transnational developments in comics history. Yet, this case study indicates a rather limited awareness among comic creators of previous and foreign and frank graphic representations. Apart from exceptional characters like Tintin, Superman, and Astro Boy, the comics universe doesn't seem to have a strong historical consciousness of previous characters and narratives. Up to a certain degree, comics have been a medium without a memory. But, on the other hand, the recent examples by Boyer and Jan suggest this is changing, though it remains to be seen if it is actually a worldwide development. Transnational influences in comics are still hard to identify. Nevertheless, the references comics make to other media emphasize the wider international context of both popular culture and high culture in which they operate. Analyzing the meaning and role of comics, including the transnational similarities and differences, demands our attention for this larger context, in order to establish its ever-changing position as a cultural phenomenon. Thank you for your attention.